Hello and welcome to the short Vort on Parshas Shoftim. In Pirkei Zion Pasuk Yutes, it says, "Lo sakir panim." You shall not show favoritism. If you're a judge, you cannot show preference to one of the litigants. Rashi says the reason for this is because if you show preference to one of the litigants, the other one will feel that there's a bias against them. They won't be able to present their case well. Question is, though, says Rabbi Wolbe in Rabbi Wolbe on Chumash, is why not? They prepared the case, they have their information. Why does this affect them? It's because when someone has ha'aras panim, actually has hester panim, when someone shows dislike or disapproval, then it affects their confidence, makes them anxious, and they can't present well. That's the opposite of ha'aras panim. When somebody shows like or care or respect, now, every person wants to feel that other people has an interest in him or her. At the same time, every person has the ability to show ha'aras panim, to make someone else feel that wanted, being befriended, that people desire. However, it happens a lot of times have this hester panim. People know each other and they're not getting along. They just don't feel that approval. And he says that the reason is that often that people are waiting for the other person to initiate something to develop the relationship. For example, a teacher might be waiting for the student to come ask questions, and the student might be waiting for the teacher to take the first step. And then that distance remains. Now, that could happen in other relationships, and each one thinks the other person doesn't want them. But the obligation is for each person to take the first step in making a relationship, to smile. When you see someone, walk past them, smile. As Rav Masya Ben Charash said in Pirkei Avos, Perek Dalet, and either Mishnah 15 or 20, depending on the count, he says, "V'maktim shalom l'chol adam." Always be the first to greet somebody else. Now, babies are particularly sensitive to the expressions of people. Whether the person is smiling at them or frowning at them, that could mean that the baby is going to giggle, or that means that the baby is going to cry. And it's the way they're trained as they grow up has an influence on them. As the Sefer says, who knows which is more important for the proper development of a child? Nourishment in the form of food or in the form of ha'aras panim? This reminds me of a case I've heard a number of times about this one person who was in charge of the post investigations of suicides. And he's seen so many of them, but there was one that particularly affected him. And that was because they found a note that said, if one person had greeted me before the action, then I won't go through with it. Unfortunately, no one greeted them. No one said hello to them. I thought it was interesting to Rabbi Masya Ben Charash, the one person in the Mishnah that I quoted in Pirkei Avos. I've said that Mishnah anytime, but if you asked me if I'd ever heard this name, I would have said no. So I decided to look at the ArtScroll has introduction to the Talmud and has different biographies. And it says that Rav Masya Ben Charash, who was a Tana in Eretz Yisrael and in Rome. He lived in the generation after the destruction of the Second Temple, and he lived in Eretz Yisrael, and he established a yeshiva in Rome. Now, he also established, besides what they say is a great yeshiva, he also established one of the finest court systems, especially the fact that it was in Gullus and not Eretz Yisrael. It still had this reputation, so much so that the Gemara in Sanhedrin Lamed Beis Amud Beis, when it lists a pasuk that fits very much with this parsha, because actually the next pasuk after Lo Sakir Panim is pasuk 20, verse Chaf, switch those around, and Chaf and 20, that it says Tzedek Tzedek Tirdof, that the judges should always be, it should be righteousness, and righteousness you shall seek, which actually applies more than just judges. But in that, it teaches us that a list of when one should go after the best available court to have his case judged. And one of the examples is after Rav Masya in Rome. So we see that he was someone special. Probably the reason he hasn't been well heard of is he's only listed in two Mishnayos. One was the one in Pirkei Avos. The other one is in Yoma. However, I want to conclude with him an interesting story that I think I may have heard, but would not have known the name, where it says Rav Masya Ben Charash would sit, when he sat and learned Torah, his face shone like an angel. And the reason for that is because he never gazed at a woman. And briefly speaking, the Satan was jealous and got permission from Hashem to appear to him as the most beautiful person since Bereshit's time, and a beautiful woman, to try to tempt Rav Masya. No matter which way he looked, there this woman would be, till finally he poked out his own eyes so that he wouldn't see, and he was blind so he wouldn't be tempted. This shocked the Satan, and then so Hashem sent Rafal to heal Rav Masya, but Rav Masya refused because he was afraid that the Satan would tempt him again, and he didn't give in and let his vision come back until Hashem promised that he would not be tempted by the Yetzer Hara. In conclusion, we see that a few well-placed words or a smile have an amazing power. It's something to use with your friends, with your spouse, your acquaintances, your colleagues, your neighbors, anyone it is. You don't know how it will affect their day. So let's start it every day, start it that way. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful week and a wonderful Shabbos.